If you're calling in and your last four digits are 9144, can you please state your name?
Hi, Easter. This is Mike Bond.
Hi, Mike. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Easter, should we wait a couple minutes?
Yeah, I don't believe Drew is on yet.
Yeah, I don't see Drew either.
Yeah, it looks like, yeah, I think we should probably wait just a little bit longer.
That's fine. I'm good.
Okay, great.
So, Easter, it also looks like we're missing Victoria from Santa Rosa and Logan from City of Sonoma. Oh, there's Drew. Oops, not that one. That's right. Oh.
Susan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Success.
Yay. I don't see, do we know if Victoria's going to join us or Logan?
Good morning, Susan. This is Jennifer Burke from Santa Rosa. I am texting with Victoria right now.
Okay.
It looks like some mix-up might have happened, so I'm not sure if she's going to be able to join.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay.
Hmm? No, I just put her after maybe 10 minutes ago.
Hey, Drew, this is Grant. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great.
Oh, Easter, are we ready, you think?
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely start if you'd like. It's about
Okay.
7 after, and it doesn't look like we have any new additions at this time.
Okay. Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, I say let's get going.
Okay, then at 9:07, this interesting Monday morning, I will call the meeting to order. And we had success, so this looks great. And I will ask that the recording secretary please do a roll call.
Okay, for WAC, City of Cotati,
Here.
City of Petaluma.
Here.
And if you guys, apologies, if you don't mind stating your name as well.
Dave King.
Susan Harvey.
Thank you. City of Santa Rosa. City of Burnett Park.
Jake McKenzie, present.
City of Sonoma. North Marin Water District.
Jack Baker here.
Town of Windsor.
Sam Stammen.
Valley of the Moon Water District.
John Foreman here.
Marin Municipal Water District. All right, TAC, City of Cotati.
Mike Scott.
City of Petaluma.
Kent Carruthers.
City of Burnett Park. City of Santa Rosa.
Jennifer Burke here.
City of Sonoma.
Colleen Ferguson here.
North Marin Water District.
Drew McIntyre's here.
Town of Windsor.
Sandy Potter here.
Valley of the Moon Water District. Marin Municipal Water District.
Mike Bond here.
David, Director Rabbit.
He's at a Board of Supervisors meeting this morning.
Okay, thank you. Grant Davis.
Yes, present.
Pam Jean.
Present.
Jay Disperse. Disperse.
Jaspers, I'm
I
here.
apologize.
No worries.
Don Seymour. Don Seymour? Okay. Paul Piazza?
Good morning, I'm here.
Stephen Hancock? Any additional staff or attendees that were not said? Okay.
Thank you so much for that. Then we will move on to public comment. Drew, did we receive any public comment?
Madam Chair, we did not.
We did not. Okay, so let the record show that we received no public comment. And then we have the recap from the special WAC meeting, which we approved the budget on April 6th. Are there any questions on that? Questions or comments? Can I have a motion?
This is Jack Baker. I'll move approval.
And a second?
Dave King, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And Easter, could I ask for a roll call vote, please?
City of Cotati?
Yes.
City of Petaluma?
Yes.
City of Runner Park?
Aye.
City of Santa Rosa? Okay. City of Sonoma? Northburn Water District?
Jack Baker, yes.
Town of Windsor?
Sam Salmon, yes.
Valley of the Moon Water District?
John Foreman, yes.
All right, so item 3 unanimously approved.
Thank you so much. And then we will move on to the recap from the March 2nd TAC meeting, and I'll turn that over to Drew.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. For the TAC members, we have an action item here to approve the March 2nd Technical Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Are there any questions on the meeting minutes? Hearing none, can I have a motion and a second?
Craig Scott, move to approve.
Jennifer Burke, second.
I have a motion from Cotati, second from Santa Rosa. And Easter, you want to go ahead and do the roll call for approval of the minutes?
City of Cotati?
Yes.
City of Petaluma?
Yes.
City of Runner Park? City of Santa Rosa?
Yes.
City of Sonoma?
Yes.
Northburn Water District?
Yes.
Town of Windsor?
Aye.
Valley of the Moon Water District? Okay, and that is item 4 unanimously approved.
Thank you for that. And then we can move on to item 5, which is the Water Supply Coordination Council. And we did meet on April 27th. We also had a video meeting, well, not video, but audio. And we came together to create this agenda. That's all I have to report on that. So we can move on to item 6, which is the Potter Valley project relicensing. Item A, I believe, Pam, that you're going to cover item A.
Yeah, I don't know, Drew, if you wanted to do any sort of intro.
Well, yeah, Pam, just this is a lead in for the next item 6B, which is an action item for the WAC to approve a support letter for the filing that the planning agreement partners did last Wednesday to FERC. So before I give an overview on the support letter and what's in it, Pam is going to go ahead and just provide a summary of the document that was filed by FERC, just kind of to set the stage before my discussion on the support letter. So that's my preamble, Pam. All yours.
Sounds great. So just really briefly, what we submitted ourselves as well as our 4 partners submitted last Wednesday to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission consisted of a cover letter as well as a feasibility study report. We all got together sort of in phases beginning last May. The partners include ourselves, Humboldt County, Mendocino County Inland Water and Power Commission, Caltrout, and the Round Valley Indian Tribes. And we formed a partnership about a year ago. Some of us as late as August. We are currently known as the Two Basin Solution Partnership, striving towards a two basin solution associated with the Potter Valley Project, which covers both the Russian River Basin and the Eel River Basin. Back in June of 2019, we filed a notice of intent with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. The first step in the process that we laid out in that notice of intent to FERC, that FERC subsequently approved in August, was to complete a feasibility study and submit to FERC a feasibility study report. So we hired a consultant team in the September timeframe last year. They got to work in the October timeframe, did a ton of work over a very, very short period of time. And the partners, after a lot of meeting, a lot of discussion, very honest discussion and difficult discussion, and a lot of thought, submitted the filing that we submitted last Wednesday. That filing, as I said, consisted of a cover letter as well as a feasibility study report. And that feasibility study report includes several elements. The elements that were included were according to the planning agreement that the partners have that was executed last year. So those elements include a description of a regional entity that will be formed in order to apply for a FERC license. The license application is due in April of 2022. It also includes a project plan showing capital modifications as well as operations and maintenance requirements for continued hydroelectric generation, as well as diversion of water to the Russian River watershed. That project plan was probably the item that was most discussed by the parties. And I'll describe it to you just really briefly in a minute. The third item that was included in the study report was a fisheries restoration plan with measures to be implemented under a new license. The fourth item was an application study plan. So to get from where we are today to the point where you can actually submit an application for a license with FERC, there's a lot of studies that have to be done in order to zero in on what the project would look like, as well as be able to disclose the environmental impacts associated with the project. So that's a really big step in the FERC process that was addressed in the study plan at a pretty high level, or in the report, excuse me. And lastly, the last component of the feasibility study report was a financial plan that included notation of specific sources of funding, both for the next couple of years up to the point where the license application would be filed, as well as how would you pay for operations and maintenance in the long term, as well as capital improvements that might be necessary. We've certainly identified them that are necessary for the project. I do want to note that the consultant didn't do all of this work, and specifically the regional entity formation work was done by a work group, a subgroup of partners. So there were a series of technical memos that were developed, but really the the submittal itself didn't include all of that work. It just included this report that I just outlined for you. So just so you have an idea of what the project plan, which as I said, was really sort of the major component that included a lot of discussion, as well as folks really having to compromise. The major components of that project include, hold on. It includes removal of Scott Dam. Scott Dam is the dam that creates Lake Pillsbury on the Eel River. It includes, associated with removal of that dam, it includes sediment management as well as vegetation management in the footprint of what is currently the lake. It also includes modifications at Van Arsdale Dam. That is the diversion dam downstream of Scott Dam where the diversion takes place. This is, these modifications are required in order to increase the diversion, because what we are talking about, if you take Scott Dam out, then you no longer have summertime storage for water. So you have to operate the project in what we call run-of-the-river mode, which means that you're moving water and generating hydroelectric power when there's high flows in the Eel River. So you don't have year-round diversions from the Eel River to the Rush River. Another component of the project plan is fish passage modifications at Cape Horn Dam. Again, this is the diversion dam where the diversion takes place. And the fish facilities there in terms of both upstream and downstream passage need some help. So that we're talking about including modification to fish passage there, as well as a revised operation plan for operation of the project. As I described, if you don't have summer storage on the Eel River, then you're operating on what we term a run-of-the-river mode. So that requires a very big change in operations of the project that we would have to work out with the resource agencies. There also, just for your information, there was a number of projects that were not FERC jurisdictional that the parties are looking at including in order for this whole thing to be considered one solution for both basins. And one of the specific non-FERC projects that's included in the project plan is a water supply project for the Potter Valley Irrigation District, who normally would receive their water, currently receives their water from the discharge from the power plant in Potter Valley. But they would not have access to summer water coming through that project if we're in run-of-the-river mode. So there's also a description of, or not so much a description, but just a note in the feasibility study report that there are projects outside of FERC's jurisdiction, including this water supply for Potter Valley Irrigation District. So that's really the extent of the report itself that we submitted, and I'd be glad to answer any questions if there are any.
Pam, I just have a comment. The press release that was issued out in the documents, I thought that was extremely well written and pretty much put it into view of what's actually going on. When we had our meeting to approve the letter, the only discourse I heard that was negative was about the people in Lake Pillsbury that are going to be displaced or lose their business. But I did notice that in the comments there, people are discussing it. So I think that was the only issue I saw that might come forth out of this whole thing.
Call from
What was that? That's the end of my comments.
Any other comments or questions? I don't see any.
Excuse me, was that Grant that was just talking?
No,
John.
John and Valley
It would be
Lagoon.
helpful. Okay, it would be helpful when people offer comment something that they would just first give their name.
Sure.
A lot of you recognize each other, but some of us don't. Thank you.
And you're on the phone.
This is
so
Jack Baker.
Yeah, Jack, and you're on the phone, so you really can't see. So thank you for that.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you.
Any
My
other?
apologies.
No, that's okay, John. Any other comments? I don't see any hands raised. Well, Pam, I know that you have spent, thousands of hours on this, and I know that you've kept some of us updated for quite a long time and worked really hard. As you said, for negotiated terms, and I'm sure that took a lot of work. And I know that there's a lot of folks with you and behind you and beside you that helped get us this far. So I want to thank you for that. And you can pass that on to everyone that you work with.
Thanks, Susan. There was quite a team that worked to get this done. We were meeting very, very regularly during this. And I have some amazing colleagues who got us to that endpoint, including a very lengthy and had a lot of people involved with a PowerPoint presentation for a very large meeting last week with Congressman Huffman. So I want to thank all of them. They're a huge, huge help.
Great.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Hi,
Drew.
this is Drew. I'd also like to follow up on what Pam actually just mentioned, which was after Wednesday's FERC filing, Thursday afternoon, Jared Huffman had a virtual ad hoc meeting, and I'm surprised Pam even has any voice left because, as has already been mentioned, there was the main focus of that meeting, the Huffman ad hoc meeting, was to review what was actually filed with FERC. And so, Pam's already summarized that document, but I would like to just take a minute to mention after the presentation by the planning agreement partners, otherwise now known as two basin partners, just some of the general discussion after that presentation. So in a nutshell, my takeaway from that meeting was when it got to the discussion point, a lot of the discussion really was what's the role of the Huffman ad hoc process moving forward, and recognizing that the planning agreement partners are 5 entities, and the Huffman ad hoc stakeholder group was, 25 to 30, Pam? So you've got this core group that submitted the initial FERC filing. You have a project that is going to encompass a lot more entities and stakeholders than just those 5 planning agreement partners. And that was a lot of the discussion after the presentation, just with the stakeholder group, is how is the Huffman stakeholder group going to continue, and what role? And so obviously no definitive answers at this point, just a lot of questions. And the one thing I can say is that it sounded like there was a commitment, obviously, to keep moving forward with the stakeholder meetings. I think there'll be another one scheduled sometime this summer. Some of this discussion at the end of the meeting took place after Congressman Huffman had to leave and catch a red eye to fly back to DC. So we didn't have the opportunity to hear some of his input during this discussion phase about his thoughts on, the role of the TAC and the schedule moving forward. But in any event, just wanted to pass that along and let you know that the Huffman ad hoc group does still have some legs and will continue. And Grant, I don't know if you want to add anything else from that meeting.
Well, I would like to again, thank the TAC members and those that had been, and your council actually helping us work through this over the last year, essentially. Pam, I want to commend you and the whole team. There were several that just spent an inordinate amount of time setting this up with our council and our outside council. It is true that at this point, Congressman Huffman deserves a lot of credit for getting us all together and insisting that we come up with a two-basin solution, which I believe the project that's proposed has the potential to be just that. But I also want to remind folks what a long slug this is going to be. I think I've said it before, but this is going to take a considerable amount of time. As Pam alluded to, that the license doesn't expire for PG&E until April 2022. And there will be a new phase that we're entering in. So what that looks like and how that's going to be managed is still very much being discussed. But I know Pam and the team and all the folks here that have been following this have been meeting regularly, staying in touch. There was good commentary provided. The fact that there's a item on the next agenda item to support this effort is very encouraging. But it is going to take us a long while. And I hope that we can capitalize on this opportunity to have a regional solution or a regional stake in this that has to be developed. So we've yet to create this idea of a regional entity. That's one of the major efforts that will need to take place in the near term. We want that to be inclusive of the folks that are going to have to manage whatever's to be optimized with the Potter Valley project. It's true that the folks in Lake County, I think there needs to be a concerted effort to incorporate whatever we can of their needs. So the one thing I would say in response to what was said earlier about that, Senator McGuire has been in communication with Congressman Huffman. And as you know, Senator McGuire actually represents Lake County, and he is calling for more active participation from that neck of the woods. And so I expect pretty short order efforts to accommodate and try and work through the folks that actually have the facility that's going to be probably most affected by this plan. And that's going to be a challenge. And I think that's one area to watch, and we'll obviously be talking about that further. McGuire is looking for, a subcommittee to begin addressing that. And I'm pretty sure that's likely going to happen in the coming months. So if not weeks. So once again, for WAC members and TAC members, I just appreciate the level of effort that's gone in. Quite frankly, I've been asking Pam, can we get just a little time? Give us a week where we're not going to be doing Potter Valley all in, because it's exhausting. Quite frankly, I literally feel like we've got to the finish line, but we need a breather before we pick this back up again.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this item from anyone?
Susan?
Yeah.
This is Jennifer Burke from Santa Rosa. I just also would really just like to thank the Water Agency, Pam and Grant in particular, for all of the work to keep the contractors and TAC members informed and involved throughout this whole process. I think that was really incredibly helpful, and we greatly appreciate you guys keeping us informed and taking our feedback and representing us through this process. So I just really wanted to thank you and congratulate you for a really, really difficult work product, getting it done in such a timely manner. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jennifer.
And interestingly enough, as Grant said, the license doesn't expire to 2022, but as seen, as Pam has moved on and kind of kept us informed, those months go by very quickly and all those meetings and negotiations. So I think that it will come in light speed before we know it. So unfortunately, but thank you for the previous work. And I know you guys will do an awesome job moving forward. So if there are no more questions, we can move on to item 6B. So we met as the subgroup, the ad hoc committee, and talked about a letter of support, and the group agreed that to move that letter of support forward to the whole WAC group. So hopefully you've had a chance to read that. I guess one of the things, and it was mentioned to me by a couple of people, is, you know, what is the commitment here? And it's really supporting the report. It doesn't, not committing us funding wise to anything. And that was the biggest concern that I heard at this point. And it's really just supporting us moving forward. And as Grant said, it's going to take a lot of steps before we get to that. So any questions on the letter?
Madam Chair, this is Drew.
Yes.
I just, for the point of clarification, the letter has been structured so that it's being sent by not only the 8 prime water contractors, but also Marin Municipal Water District. So this action item would include a yay or a nay from Marin Municipal Water District. A couple other things I'd like to just point out that some of the items that are in this letter is consistent with what the WAC approved back in October 2019 when they voted unanimously for resolution supporting continued successful collaboration with Sonoma County Water Agency and ongoing Potter Valley project activities. The letter continues to support the 2-basin solution for the mutual benefit of both the Eel River and the Russian River. The letter essentially continues to support the agency's commitments to retain water supply resiliency for the water contractors, and also fully supports the development of a financial plan to make sure that there's adequate funding for long-term sustainable operations, and also adds language that it makes sure that whatever is developed, that it ensures that the water contractors will not be obligated to pay any costs that are disproportionate to the benefit received by the water contractors or their customers. So I just wanted to hit some of those highlights on that.
Thank you for that, Drew. Any questions? Not seeing any hands raised, any? Okay. Then is there any public comment on this item, Drew?
Madam Chair, there is not.
Okay. So if there's no questions from the WAC or the TAC for that matter, and no public comment, then I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, John Foreman, Valley of the Moon. I move that we approve the letter and authorize signature by the WAC Chair, Susan Harvey.
Thank you for that. Do we have a
Okay,
second?
Jack Baker, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And I would ask the recording secretary to please do a roll call vote.
City of Cotati,
Yes.
City of Petaluma,
Yeah, Dave King, yes. Sorry about that.
thank you. City of Burnett Park,
Aye.
City of Santa Rosa,
Aye.
City of Sonoma, North Marin Water District,
Yes, Jack Baker, aye.
Town of Windsor,
Sam Salmon, aye.
Valley of the Moon Water District,
John Foreman, aye.
Marin Municipal Water District.
Jack Gibson, aye.
All right. That is item 6.B, unanimously approved.
Okay, thank you for that. Then we will move on to item 7, which is the Sonoma Marin Water Saving Partnership. And Drew, I believe you're going to take most of this.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So there are 4 different items under the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership. I'm going to handle the first 2, and then Paul Piazza will handle items C and D. So the first one is our regular tabulation of water production relative to the 2013 benchmark year. So in this attachment there, you can see a chart essentially of historical water usage over time, and then the tables, table 1 and table 2. Table 1 shows that, again, this is for through March. Table 1 shows the March total water deliveries. Again, this is total deliveries by each water contractor. It's the sum of their Sonoma County Water Agency deliveries as well as what they're using for local supply. And so for the month of March, you can see that the total deliveries were 7% below the 2013 base year. And then year to date, so January, February, and March combined is 10% below the 2013 baseline year. And I went back last year at this time in 2019, water usage through March was about 13% below the baseline year. So pretty similar. Recognize obviously that we had less rainfall in March of this year than last year. Last year was a very wet year. So it continues to show that our water usage by the water contractors is still continually track below the 2013 baseline year, even though populations numbers have been increasing across the region. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has. Okay. Hearing none, I'm just going to continue on to item 6B. This is a partnership letter that's been drafted to support, essentially to support the watersense program. And in this letter, essentially, it would go out under my signature as Technical Advisory Committee Chair, but essentially is representing the entire Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership. The letter provides strong support for the watersense program that we've been participating with for many years. The comments particularly pertain to a question about whether to include consumer satisfaction in the specifications as they're developed. And the recommendation is to keep consumer satisfaction criteria separate from product specifications. This is consistent with a general industry-wide trend from retail water agencies. Customer satisfaction information can exist within WaterSense, but it be handled just at the brand level itself and not part of the specifications. So I'm not going to ask for a roll call here. It's essentially, this is for the entire partnership. It includes the retail water contractors, Marin Municipal Water District, and also Cal American Water. So I think to keep this moving along, I just ask if there's anybody in opposition for this letter being submitted. Okay, hearing none, I will we'll get that submitted. Thanks to everybody on the attack on that. And then we're going to move to item C, the summer ad campaign. And this is an oral report from Paul Piazza with Sonoma County Water Agency. Paul?
Good morning, everybody. Hope you can hear me okay.
We can.
All right.
Yep.
So just wanted to provide a brief overview of this summer's ad campaign that we're moving forward with. Obviously, it's a bit of a unique situation that we find ourselves in with the current shelter order. So the approach we've landed on essentially was a campaign that's supportive to our customers and emphasizes the value that water brings to them, particularly as they are sheltering in place, and we're seeing a lot of people undergoing work to take on home garden projects, and also just to understand the value that water has played in their lives over the past several years due to some of the other crises that we've been through with fires and the PSPS power shutoffs. We felt that given the current shelter order, we wanted to back away a little bit from a strong action message. We felt this was the best approach, particularly as we're trying to be sensitive, not to offend those who may take exception to a conservation efficiency message while they're prioritizing what to do about loss of work, family health, etc. It's not to say that we're not recognizing that this is a low rainfall year, so we are continuing to push messaging out for water savings, particularly around radio spots that provide information on ways to save water for their landscapes. The summer typically being the high demand period for outdoor water use. We're also moving forward with a branding campaign for watersense. There's been a lot of uptake for home improvement projects for the shelter order. And so we want to make sure that people understand that the most efficient products are those that are branded with watersense. And again, just looking at the monthly water use statistics, we have seen an uptick in the residential consumption. So the campaign's sort of twofold in that it's going to keep the outdoor focus, but also have a little bit of bent towards indoor water savings as well. We have the print campaign that actually just got finalized and emailed to me from one of my staff at the beginning of this meeting. So we'll be sharing that with the conservation coordinators for additional review and input.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
And then that will go forward for final look by the TAC ad hoc before we move to do our media buys for those to go to the news outlets, both in print and online form. We're also doing some buys this summer for radio spots. Those radio spots will be focused more on the outdoor water use. And then we have a digital campaign that we're putting together as well. Some of you may recall we had some success playing videos as advertisements during breaks on the Pandora streaming radio and potentially YouTube. So we're looking into doing similar buys again this year for the outdoor focused message. So that's all I have for the summer ad campaign. We're aiming for the traditional Memorial Day weekend launch, although we may be just slightly delayed in full deployment of some of those aspects that I mentioned. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Paul, you want to go ahead and move on to item D?
Absolutely. So wanted to provide an update about the annual eco-friendly garden tour that was originally scheduled for Saturday, May 2nd. As you can imagine, we had to cancel the in-person garden tour, which was unfortunate. This was the 10th anniversary of the eco-friendly garden tour. So staff had a couple of special events planned that he had to cancel last minute, but I'm happy to say that staff was very quickly able to transition to a virtual approach this year to the garden tour, where solicitations were sent out to the 28 garden hosts that had signed up to participate for them to create and submit video garden tours. And so we did receive 16 submitted videos, including staff from the city of Santa Rosa for their downtown garden that they completed in the last couple of years. The Laguna Foundation submitted as well, and then additional private gardens throughout Sonoma and Marin counties. So those videos went live on the partnership's website on Saturday, May 2nd. And in addition to the videos themselves, the remainder of the gardens featured video slideshows. They were still photography, but you could still visit the website and visit those gardens and get all of the information about them and view imagery of the gardens remotely. There was partnerships that were created as well with the Milo Baker chapter of the California Native Plant Society. So they transitioned their annual plant sale to an online format that was wildly successful. They went live just prior to the start of the May 2nd date, they were concerned that they wouldn't be able to generate the same amount of participation that they use on this plant sale for fundraising. So they started a little early and quickly sold out of their entire plant inventory of just under 1,000 native plants. So great success for them. We also had partnerships with Daily Acts and the Laguna Foundation and the Habitat Corridor Project to provide a live gardening workshop on the day of the tour. They had over 100 participants in that workshop, and it was such a success that they're looking to move forward with a weekly live gardening check-in throughout the summer to help answer gardening questions that people are having. We actually saw that that's a very popular approach earlier in the season with the Water Conservation Showcase, where they are featuring a similar garden talk, kind of like if you've heard of Car Talk. It's kind of a Q&A hour where people can call in and ask all of the pertinent questions about the pests and plant problems they're having, or get information and links to resources for getting projects done at their house. So that was a great success. Overall, we saw about 6,400 unique website visits to the tour on the partnership website, 5,500 on the May 2nd date. So although it doesn't surpass our 7,000 signups that were in person last year, on short notice, I would say that it was a great success, and we'll continue to maintain the videos on the website and continue to market their availability throughout the coming weeks. So that's my update there. Happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Thank you for that, Paul. It's really interesting how with these times changing, you know, people have more time to do things like planting gardens and need a little help with that. Other things, I've been taking a couple cooking classes online, and in case you have probably noticed, I had to turn off my video because my son is taking his exam, his final exam, and multiple Zooms at the same time with video don't seem to work very well. So these times are very interesting times. But any questions for Paul? I think that was
Madam Chair, this is Drew. I just having a comment.
Yeah.
Paul, did you say that there were 6,400 clicks or whatever you want to call them for people accessing the virtual?
That's correct, Drew. We've had 6,400 is the total of the unique days or unique views since the Eco-Friendly Garden Tour went live on the 2nd.
And then what was Friday? And then what was the number that you compared that to for a normal year of?
My recollection was that last year's tour, we set a record for signups of just over 7,000. So
pretty impressive.
Yeah, very impressive.
I think that because the videos will be continuing to be available on the website, and we'll do periodic posts to make the public aware that they're there as a resource that will continue to get traffic for those over time.
Hey, Paul, this is Sandy Potter from Windsor. I was just thinking about maybe this increased gardening is a silver lining and more consciousness about the earth and use of the water. And I appreciate so much your organizing and doing the outreach for this year, a unique year. I was wondering if the live gardening and the Q&A sessions are on the partnerships website or the Daily Acts and the Laguna Foundation websites.
Those are being spearheaded through the Daily Acts website, although we easily can link to them through the partnership website.
Okay, thanks so much.
How we were doing it on the day of the tour. So.
Great. Other questions or comments? Thank you so much, Paul, and great success. Then we will move on to the water supply conditions, the Faro update. I believe Jay is going to take this.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna actually tag team this item with Don Seymour, and we're gonna cover, I'll cover the update to the FERO, or Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations program. And then Don will talk about a temporary agency change petition that he's leading the development on, given the dry conditions, extremely dry conditions this year. We're going to be needing to file a TUCP, much like we did in the 2013 and 14 timeframe when we were last in drought conditions. So first I'm going to talk about and give an update on the FERO project and some great success we've had there. Despite that success, as you'll see, the year has been so dry that we're still going to need to carefully manage Lake Mendocino storage, and Dawn is putting together the petition that kind of covers how we're planning to carefully manage storage through the end of this year into next fall, when hopefully we will receive and Mother Nature will be providing us with more rainfall. So to start this discussion, I think we've talked with you in the past about FERO. This is a first of its kind project, innovative project that we have been working on developing Sonoma Water with the Corps of Engineers and Scripps, Center for Western Weather and Water Extremes, along with our other project partners, California Department of Water Resources, the Bureau of Reclamation, NOAA, National Marine Fisheries, National Weather Service, and Office of Atmospheric Research are all partnered with us in this program over the last 6 years to develop this program. We are now, this program is being replicated, the model we've developed in Mendocino at the Prado Reservoir with Orange County Water District and their partners at the Corps and others. And then also New Bullards Bar by Yuba County Water Agency and Lake Oroville with California Department of Water Resources. With Lake Mendocino Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations the last 2 years. So last year we had a very wet year and we were able to achieve, the Corps of Engineers granted us what's called a major deviation, which allows extra space in the flood pool to use forecasting to manage reservoir operations and releases, both for water supply and flood benefits. And we were able to get a similar major deviation this year that we're just coming out of, and you'll see the results this year. I'll show you in a minute. And last week, I will just say that we submitted to the Corps of Engineers another request for a major deviation to cover a period of 5 years. So go back one, Drew, or whoever's controlling the slides. That's possible.
If you go back to the first slide that was just shown.
First slide, please.
Okay.
Oh, going the wrong way. There we go. Okay, so this just shows where we stack up this year. This is as of May 12th, so it does not include the recent rains we had that were just coming out of this last week. But it shows at the Ukiah rain gauge up near Lake Mendocino, over 127 years of record, that this year, at least as of May 12th, was the third driest on record out of 127 years. So clearly a significantly dry year that we have experienced. Now you can move on to the next slide. So as I mentioned, we were able to, working with the Corps of Engineers and our partners, the Corps of Engineers allowed this part of the flood control pool on the figure. It's called the FERO and Major Deviation Variable Buffer Pool. Not a very easy name there, but that is the area in which the Corps now has, under this major deviation, discretion to hold on to water in the flood pool for potential water supply benefits. So this year, what little rain we got was in the end of November to middle of December, and then pretty much everything, the spigot turned off. So what we see here in the black line is the actual storage that we've been able to achieve using forecast-informed reservoir operations. And the brown line is our simulation of what those operations would have been given the weather we experienced if we had used the traditional, been required to use the water control manual rules for Coyote Valley Dam. So although our rainfall was under 40% of average this year, we were able to achieve an 18% increase in storage. So this clearly shows the water supply benefits. Last year, we had a very wet year, and we were able to manage the very wet year with flood releases, et cetera, successfully too. So within the last 2 years, we've been able to demonstrate through these operations, through the major deviation program with the Corps, the variability and successful operation using forecasting for operations. So we're going to use this moving forward. We're working our team on a final viability assessment, which we're hoping to have complete by the end of the year, which will document in a lot of detail the benefits and the advantages of doing this program and set us up, we believe, to work with the Corps on a water control manual change that will allow some form of FERO, perhaps like this, indefinitely and onto the future by changing the rules for Coyote Valley Dam. So we're pretty excited about that, and I think this this year really has demonstrated some of the incredible benefits for water supply. That said, and I'm going to turn it over to Dawn here, because the year was so dry and because of Lake Pillsbury, low storage there, and they're not implementing any kind of FERO regime over there. We've had reduced Potter Valley diversions, and increasingly there'll be much lower diversions through the summer. So Dawn's going to talk about the plan to manage that, those reduced diversions through the end of the water year. And I'll turn it over to Dawn.
Good morning, everyone. So as Jay mentioned, we will be filing a temporary change petition this year, partly driven by the dry conditions. However, with the increased storage we were seeing back in early March, we actually thought we would be able to make it through without such a filing. However, as some of you might know, and Jay mentioned, storage at Lake Pillsbury for the Potter Valley project is critically low. And as a consequence, PG&E filed they submitted a request for a variance to reduce minimum stream flows for the project. And this is both in the Eel River and also in the transfer of water into the East Branch Russian River. And so because of that, we're going to be seeing very significant reductions in transfer from the project this year. We're anticipating anywhere from 35 to 45 CFS a reduction than we anticipated. And this is really what's going to be driving our urgency change petition this year. That variance was submitted by PG&E in mid-April, approved by FERC on April 30th, and implemented on May 1st. So we've been seeing those reduced inflows for the past almost 3 weeks. Can you advance the slide, please? So this is showing, this figure shows the current storage well, almost current. The slide was made last week. But the black line is the storage for 2020, and the blue line is storage for 2013. The brown line is observed storage for 2015, and the green line is observed storage for 2014. And as you can see, we're well above, even though we're as drier than most of those years, we're well above as a result of forecast-informed reservoir, or the major deviation that was implemented for 2020. However, because of those reduced Potter Valley inflows, we're going to see significantly lower we're going to see significant declines going into the summer. And as a consequence, can you go to the next slide, please? This figure shows in black the observed storage so far this year. And the brown represents what we're forecasting based on projections we've developed using our reservoir operations model. As you can see, as of October 1, we're seeing the reservoir storage decline below 30,000 acre feet to approximately 27,000 acre feet. So as a consequence, even though we're in dry water supply conditions, which requires a minimum stream flow requirement of 75 CFS on the upper Russian River, which is the confluence of the East Fork and the West Fork down to Dry Creek, and then 85 CFS on the lower river, which is from the confluence of Dry Creek and the main stem to the Pacific Ocean. We're seeing those trying to meet those minimum stream flows as really depleting storage in Lake Mendocino. And so to mitigate that, we will be filing a temporary change petition with the State Water Resources Control Board. And we are going to be requesting, as of July 1, minimum stream flows on the upper Russian River be reduced to 50 CFS, and on the lower Russian River be reduced to 60 CFS. We're also requesting from the State Board that they include in the order approving that TUCP, and exactly like what we did in 2013, we're going to be including a critical water supply storage curve for Lake Mendocino. And if actual storage levels drop below that critical storage level for more than 3 days, we're going to be asking that triggers minimum stream flows on the upper Russian River dropping to 25 CFS, and on the lower Russian River dropping to 35 CFS, so that we can maintain adequate storage in Lake Mendocino for fall salmonid migration and rearing and migrating habitat, and then also for prudent carryover storage in case, this is, 2021 turns out to be a 2014. So with that, can I answer any questions?
Anyone have any questions?
Don, this is Mike Vaughn. Thanks for that report. I just had a question. When are you anticipating filing the petition with the regional board or the state board?
We anticipate filing late May, or hopefully, by June 1 or late May, and we're requesting that this goes in effect as of July 1, and then that temporary change petitions have a maximum duration of 180 days. So that would take us to almost the end of December.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Drew.
Yes, Drew.
Yeah, Don, thanks to you and Jay for this update on what the agency is working on. You say it's similar to what was done in 2013 and 14. Is it exact?
Well, what's similar? It's not exact. The similarity is the fact that we in 2013 we requested this. They include this critical storage curve, just because there's so much uncertainty with, these are projections we're making, that there's so much uncertainty really with how much landscape drought has occurred because this is such a dry year, how warm this summer will be. So it's really going to be driven by demands. And so we want something that can be triggered right away if those storage levels, the actual storage levels, drop to below where we want to be. So we want something that can quickly react versus having to try to go back to the state board and request, an additional action.
And then just another question. Since the last time this was done in 2014, now we got 6 years under everybody's belt. Is there improved coordination with the ag industry in the upper Russian River that might be a benefit this go around versus back in 2014?
So we have formed the Upper Russian River Managers Group, and we meet approximately quarterly. With this COVID, it's a bit of a curveball, but we anticipate meeting in June, where we'll be bringing this information to that group. And it's made up of both, water districts and cities and ag interests. And so we do hope to discuss the potential for better coordination, which would potentially reduce the buffers we have to put on the minimum stream flow requirement to kind of accommodate the dynamics going on on the river as all these diversions are going on that we don't have any control over. So that would be where we might see some benefit. It's pretty difficult from the fact that we're not really dealing with one agency that's doing the diversion. We're dealing with hundreds of individual water rights holders that are doing their diversions based on their best practices for growing grapes. But we're certainly going to be bringing to the attention of that group.
Okay, thanks. And then last question that I had was, what do you expect any sort of response from the state that would have an impact to the water contractors on this filing?
So we do point out, like we have in the past, that storage in Lake Sonoma, although a bit below normal, is still at 87%, 88% of the total water supply pool, and that represents storage for a multi-year or carryover reservoir. So, and then we always include a section on water efficiency, that showing what a good job everybody's doing. So we're hoping to avoid impacts to the contractors because there's more than adequate storage in Lake Sonoma, and in light of our demands that are significantly below where they've been historically.
And Drew, if I could just add to that, we're really going to point to the success of the 2014 model in managing those low flows. And so we have precedents.
We also point out that, if there's really not a need to reduce diversions from the Russian River, there's unintended consequences such as increased groundwater pumping, which really, if it's not necessary, let's lean on Lake Sonoma, which has more than adequate storage.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? So, Dawn, have we ever done this two-step approach in any of our other filings?
Yeah, we did it in 2013, and unfortunately, it wasn't triggered. And in 2013, we requested to go to dry conditions, which we're in now. And so we were requesting to go to 75 CFS on the upper river and 85. And if it dropped below that critical storage curve, it would go to 25, 35. And so fortunately, in 2013, it wasn't triggered. And hopefully it won't be triggered this year either, because that's taking the river, as Pam would attest, to very, very low levels.
Well, we will have to pray for some more rain. We'll do some rain dances, I guess. Any other comments or questions? I'm seeing no hands. I'm seeing no one jumping in. All right. Thank you, Jay and Dawn, for that. And then we will move on to the Regional Water Supply Resiliency Study.
That's me again, Jay. Just a quick verbal update on this study, which we've been before you in the past. As a quick reminder, the Regional Resiliency Study is really embodies a collaboration between Sonoma Water and the water contractors and MMWD, where we're working together to look at really the whole regional system, from the infrastructure and water supply sources from Potter Valley down to Sausalito, looking at interconnected infrastructure, groundwater basins, river systems, surface water storage, tanks, etc., taking away the jurisdictional boundaries, and then applying stress tests of water shortages that may occur regionally or sub-regionally. For example, earthquakes or severe droughts, etc. And part of the study will be to develop a decision support framework model where we can simulate some of these, what I call stress tests. And then working together, we can look at possible projects or management actions to increase our overall resiliency and to mitigate some of these vulnerabilities we will identify through this process. And so there's the 3 basic phases of the project. The first phase, which we're in now, is working with our consultant, Jacobs Engineering, developing a work plan. And we just received a draft, Sonoma Water staff received a draft work plan late last week. So we're doing an initial review on it. Then we will be, Jacobs will be submitting a draft work plan to the TAC here, hopefully at the end of the month. And then once we have the finalized work plan, phase 2, which we're looking to begin in the new fiscal year in July, would be to actually build the model and also initiate the process working with the TAC to look at what scenarios we want to evaluate with the model, what shortage scenarios. We're looking at probably 10 to 20 in this phase 2 process to evaluate with the model. And so we all need to get together and agree on which ones we want to evaluate. And then do the evaluation and then come together and look at what management actions or projects that we want to work towards in terms of building overall resiliency against some of these vulnerabilities. And then phase 3 would be moving on after we do that work, ongoing every, I don't know, couple years, every year, whatever, getting together now that we've developed this tool and working together to see if there are new planning scenarios we want to look at in order to work together. And so just kind of an ongoing process using this tool to increase regional resiliency planning. So that's the that's where we are with the project. I think you know, the recent emergency aqueduct repair we had on the Katati Aqueduct out of the meter vault at River Road is an example of an emergency project and how we work together in order to, with reduced for a short period of time while we were affecting the repair there. We're working together in coordination with the water contractors. That's the kind of thing we're trying to build here with the resiliency study in a planning context. And I think you're going to hear in item 11 on the emergency planning coordination part of it. Again, that's an example of how this increased coordination, both on the planning, emergency response overall, is going to help us move forward to continue to improve with more resiliency in the regional system overall. So that's my report out on the study, where we are, and happy to take any questions.
So Jay, I'm assuming that one of the scenarios, since it keeps repeating, we will be looking at some form of fires and how we deal with that.
That's quite possible. I don't want to prejudge. This is going to be a team effort, but we're going to lay out criteria and then look at, you know, consequences and impacts as a group. I would expect that there will be some wildfire scenarios that will be looked at.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, this is Drew.
I knew I was going to ask you. I knew you were coming.
Thank you, Jay. Just a couple questions. You made reference to phase 2 starting middle of summer, let's say. Could you again just remind everybody if this work is already funded in next year's budget, and then what the expected duration or the period of phase 2 is?
Yes, it is funded with next year's budget. And we're still looking at this from the draft. It'll be contained in the draft work plan, but I think we're looking at probably 12 to 14 months to implement phase 2.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Drew?
No, that's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing no one jump in. Thank you for that presentation, Jay, and look forward to seeing the scenarios and how we are going to move forward together to be resilient. With that, I believe Pam is up on the biological opinion.
Yep. Thanks, Susan. Hopefully everybody got all of the handouts associated with the meeting today. There is a 2.5 pager that includes the Russian River biological opinion update for May. I'm just going to run through really quick and really just kind of point out the changes since we last spoke. So a couple of the items will be very short. So I'll start off with the fish flow project, and that item is going to be very short. There really haven't been any significant changes in the work that's being done. We continue to work on the different sections of the biological opinion. I know folks that are now teleworking are continuing to work on this. So sort of a different geography, but same work, as well as there was intended to be a sort of a public unveiling of some of the public outreach work that was being done, but that got, since that meeting that was supposed to happen did not happen with the Public Policy Facilitating Committee. Those haven't been daylighted yet, but that work is done and ready for viewing. I'm not sure what their plan is for releasing that at this point. The next item in the update is Dry Creek habitat enhancement work. We did bid out the last of the construction projects for the summer, and that is the last of the phase 3 work. And we selected a contractor. They're expected to go to our board of directors in June in order to execute that contract. Right-of-way is all in place for that work. They are still working on some of the permits, however, but they do expect to have that project done this summer, and as well as some maintenance work done to restore some function that was lost during some extended high flows last year in the creek. So both of those will be moving forward this summer, new construction as well as some maintenance work. We also continue to move forward with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on phases 4 through 6 of the project, which are essentially miles 4 through 6 for the project, and are very happy about the money that was included in a new start for the Army Corps of Engineers budget this year. Included the $28.3 million, which is the full federal amount, 65% funding for the Dry Creek work. That's been identified under their ecosystem restoration program. And we're very, very happy about that. Expect the work to be done between 2021 and 2023. So they continue to move forward with addressing that work. We also continue to meet with property owners that we expect to participate in those last 3 phases of this work. and work to address issues with them with regards to right-of-way acquisition. As far as fish monitoring goes, I like the tone of the update this month. It's kind of fun. And this is a time of year that the fish biologists love because they get to go out and actually handle fish all over the watershed. So right now they are trapping out migrating fish. These are smaller fish that are moving out to the ocean. And we have fish traps out in 8 locations between Dry Creek and all the way into the estuary near Willow Creek. And each day they go out and they check these traps. There's a couple of photos of the traps that you can see in the update. They get to go out, 7 days a week. They get to go out and check these traps and handle whatever critters they find in them, which is not just fish. This work's ongoing right now. We've had an interesting time dealing with the whole social distancing and how to place traps and work with the traps. Our folks have done a bang up job of figuring this out and figuring out how to do it safely. It's been an interesting year so far. And one of the items I think they're still trying to figure out how they're going to do is what we call seining, which are these large nets that they use down in the estuary. They throw them out, they pull them in and see what they find in the nets. And it really is a shoulder to shoulder type of an operation for staff. So I'm not sure what they're going to do there, but we have been adapting and we'll continue to adapt to our work out there. The next item is the Russian River Estuary Management Project. We are currently in the management season that started on May 15th. My understanding, unless this has changed in the last couple of days and I missed an email, is that the estuary, the mouth of the estuary is closed right now. So we are continuing. It's not Grant shaking his head. So
something happened. Yeah.
Is it over?
Yeah. Very toward the end of the week, it's my understanding that we were preparing to breach actually and been coordinating with the agencies. And as has happened in the past, there must have been a shovel brigade somewhere along the way because the estuary is now open. Okay. And this one could attract attention because we were obviously waiting to get word to go be able to take care of the estuary safely and never got that. So this Saturday we were going to go in and did not need to. So more to come probably.
Okay. So I've obviously missed some emails, but the river mouth must have opened up and maybe with some help. So that's what's going on out at the estuary right now. And you heard the last item is interim flow changes. You heard all about our being in a dry year and the changes in the Potter Valley project and the temporary urgency change petition we intend to file. So I will not belabor the point. I did want to point out though, I think since we last met that we did submit all of the annual report or the reporting that was due based on last year's order. So that got submitted in April. It may have been April 2nd instead of April 1st, but it got submitted. So with that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I do have one question, Pam. You know, the maintenance with the accumulated sediment in the Dry Creek habitat, is that an expectation when these are built that will happen and we will have to go in and clean it out periodically?
Yeah, I think to some degree they do expect to have to do that, but at the same time, as we've experienced this, I think they've been able to do some design work for future projects that will hopefully keep them from having to do it.
Okay.
And it may not, I don't think through the designs they can eliminate it 100%, but they can definitely make it better. And that's one of those adaptations that I think is happening, which is kind of nice that we've had multiple years of experience as we're moving into 3 more phases. So hopefully we can adapt our designs to help with that kind of maintenance.
That's good news. Any other questions or comments? Drew?
Madam Chair, this is Drew. Thank you, Pam. Just a couple questions. First of all, actually comments/questions. First comment is congrats to the agency for getting all the right-of-way agreements finalized for this summer work. That's not always an easy task by any stretch of the imagination, so that's good news. Related to the actual contract that's going to be approved by the directors coming up, is the contractor, is that somebody that the agency is familiar with before, or is it a new contractor for this reach? Or
it is someone we're familiar with, and Grant, maybe you can remember, tell me who it is, but it is somebody who has done work for us before, and we're really happy to get him back. You're on mute, Grant.
He's muted.
Pam, you're right. It's a contract we're very familiar with. Quite happy that it was Ranger that came in with the low bid, and it's going to allow us to do some of that maintenance that Susan was asking us about. So it's really good news, and good job, Pam.
And that's sort of leads into my second question in terms of the low bid price versus the engineer's estimate. Was there actually some money left on the table then that allowed you to spend more on the maintenance? Is that what you were saying, Grant?
Drew, you got it. They took advantage of that and made sure while they're already mobilized that they'll be able to go out and take a look at projects that were already constructed. And obviously we try and keep that to a minimum, but it is something that we're obligated in perpetuity to do. Okay, great.
And then this one's probably for you, Grant, on just going back, and I don't think we can say often enough how important and how good the news was from the Army Corps and the $28 million. And so you and other folks have been going back to DC to continue to advocate for this funding. And so with this recent amount of $28 million, is that, you know, back in our NBWRA, there was a certain amount authorized, but then to get it appropriated is a different step. I mean, is this all authorized and appropriated, and you don't need to go back to DC for any more trips? Or?
Well, I don't know about the DC trips. I will say this is a categorically different equation, and I want to thank all the WAC members over the multiple 15-year period. Many people made trips back. Multiple efforts. This actually was something that the Office of Management and Budget did, which was the right thing. They looked at our project as something that needed to get done. It was a 3-year plus arrangement, and they elected to go ahead and provide certainty to give us appropriations dollars authority directly to the Corps, programs specifically for the 3 miles. Instead of having us go back once or twice a year and literally sweating it out and having to compete with all the other projects that were in line for Corps dollars. So it's hard to overstate how significant it is for us as a region to not have to go load this up, put it on Huffman's desk and the 2 senators and go fight. It's a relief. It means we can plan accordingly. We'll get economies of scale. The project's going to get done. If we have, God forbid, some minor delays or not, you mentioned earlier, negotiating with landowners, that's quite frankly one of the most difficult aspects of this. And we got some landowners in this last mile 3 that Pam alluded to that were multiple years, some of the hardest negotiations we've witnessed. And I'm so proud of the team, the whole team that finally inked the deal to allow that full project to go forward. So it's a long way of saying that we're good, that the Corps are going to have the dollars. We'll still watch them very closely and stay in concert with them and work with them, but they're on the hook. It's what we all hoped for, that we would get paid off in the sense that by going this route, remember that so many years ago, we'd get federal support. And this is really the first large scale sign of that. And I would never let our guard down for the minute. I'm just saying we don't have the same task of having to add it. We've got it in there. The Corps is budgeting for it. We just have to stay with them and on pace.
Okay, great. Thanks, Grant.
That certainly is great news. And it was a pleasure when we had that event out at Dry Creek, and they were really very supportive also of working with everyone involved. So I think as long as we keep that relationship up, I think we're doing good stuff.
I think that Councilmember McKenzie is on or was on. I'm having a hard time with my screen here, but you know, I just want to commend all the folks that had gone back, that keep making this issue. That was a wonderful day. We've hosted so many tours that you've all been involved with, showing a consensus on this approach. I do want to state and make sure the WAC members in particular, the TAC members I think generally know this, but we have employed over the years a number of folks to help us with this. And I do want to just emphasize the strategy, because sometimes it might look like there may be an unexplained firm that's helping us in one capacity or another. But in this case, the firms that we utilized all contributed the significant resources they've earned over the years in their field. And so in this particular one, you all remember Paul Schlesinger, who's been with us as long as I can remember. Back in my Woolsey days, he represented Sonoma County and Marin County. He still does. Did a phenomenal job with the Corps. But in this particular decision for OMB, a fellow named David Anderson from the Resources Group and his staff, Sarah Tucker, did a great deal of work to convince OMB to come out and see Dry Creek at a critical time and take a look at the progress that we've been describing. And so I'm just really putting in a plug that for our region, for the water contractors, for the water agency, on many things, we're outnumbered, you know, that population wise. We have to hold together, sometimes getting inside the doors that would otherwise not be open to us. They take investments, and we've certainly made that investment. And I think in this case, we can say this one's paid off, but it's a team effort all the way around, and no one person has all the contacts required to make this happen. And I know it helps the congressman ultimately deliver for his district. So I'm just particularly relieved, but I wanted to just share that. I know you know that, but it's worth pointing out sometimes, because you never know exactly who's going to be able to pull what you need off when, and that's the power of collaboration.
Exactly. Any other comments from anyone on this item? Thank you for the presentation on that, Pam, as always. And we can now move on to the Emergency Training and Coordination Program. I believe, Jay, you're going to kick this off with Stephen.
Yeah. I'm going to kick it off, and then I'll turn it over to our new emergency manager, Stephen. And let me just say, just for a little bit of context and background, that in 2019, Sonoma County Grand Jury evaluated the regional water system for seismic hazards and vulnerabilities, much as we were talking about a couple items ago. Their report acknowledged a lot of the good work we've collectively done through the years with getting FEMA funding for local hazard mitigation plans to do some seismic resiliency projects. But they also had 6 recommendations for improved or recommended actions. In general, we agreed with basically the general recommendations. We had a few minor differences, but we have been working hard on those at Sonoma Water, as well as the contractors. There were 6 recommendations. 4 of them really focused internally on Sonoma Water procedures and protocols that we're working on. One of them was for the water contractors, and you have all responded on that matter. One of them is a combined response that we've been working on regarding public information and outreach related to seismic hazards and seismic emergency response. And then this item that we're bringing forward here is the sixth item, which involves developing an emergency training and coordination program with the contractors as well as Sonoma Water. And with that, the first part of this is to develop a plan together. And so what we have today, and what I'll turn it over to Stephen Hancock, is to just briefly go over this draft plan that we have developed. Ultimately, we would like to get comments from the TAC on the plan and then start to implement it in the new fiscal year, where we have some budgeting set aside to actually do some coordinated emergency planning activities, as it would be detailed in the plan, whatever we ultimately agree to. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Hancock. He's new to the agency. For those of you who haven't met him yet, he just joined us in mid-February, literally weeks before COVID. Little did we realize that that would be taking a lot of his activities when we hired him, but we are very happy to have him on board and with his leadership in this arena. So Stephen, take it away.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I don't want to go too far into just reading the proposed program that you have. What I kind of want to do is just kind of go over a high-level view of what we're trying to accomplish through this. I know the grand jury report really just reinforced what most of you already knew with all the frequency of disasters Sonoma County has experienced. That, you know, while we're developing our muscle memory in responding to these, maybe it's not always the best muscle memory, and we can certainly take time to improve and try and develop a greater sense of resilience and interoperability as we move forward. So the purpose of this program really, as we look at it, is kind of twofold as I'm looking at it. One is enhancing individual agency capabilities through training, exercises, workshops, thus enhancing our regional resiliency. Because if we can work individually a little bit better, regionally we'll be in a better position to absorb whatever disaster strikes. Next to that, we want to evaluate and develop opportunities in support of enhancing interoperability. This is probably where we could find a great deal of success and opportunity. I would use an example that we've been talking about specific to this COVID-19 response was the idea of developing mutual aid program specific to the agencies on this form, that we could have a turnkey system in place that if we have an impact on staffing or resources, we can turn to our neighboring agencies and get immediate response and help. There's some infrastructure that needs to be built in the back end of that. So that'd be an example of one of the areas we could focus on developing. The purpose of the emergency training program, coordination program, is really going to fall kind of under the umbrella of what we are proposing to be this emergency training and coordination subcommittee, subordinate to the TAC, where this group with each agency represented will come together and identify what are the training needs, what are the resource capabilities perhaps we could look at developing, and what are the areas of interoperability we could refine, enhance, and collectively work on together. We would use this group as the forum for establishing what the priorities are, and then making recommendations back to the TAC of what we want to, one, fund, and two, implement over the coming year. So that's kind of a really high level look at this. We are putting this out for feedback. As we know, this is kind of a new thing for the group. The one thing I can recognize that's not in here that I failed to put in was the opportunity to evaluate our progress as we go along. We will need to build in some evaluation mechanisms so that what we are doing, whether it's training or system design and development, we are evaluating that so it's purposeful progress and meeting the goals we're identifying. With that, I would take any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm always very impressed with all of us combined in Sonoma County, be it water, be it garbage, transportation, energy. We are always able to come together as a group and move different things forward for our Sonoma County. So I'm sure that this will be yet another example of how we can work together to make sure that we're prepared with that. And with that, any questions? comments? Drew?
Madam Chair. Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Drew.
Yes.
First of all, Stephen, welcome on board with the agency. Good timing. And a good addition to the agency staff. I think this will really be beneficial for the water contractors, and a lot of what's being proposed with this emergency training and coordination program are things that we've all known that we need to do and have had a hard time keeping a focus on it. And I'm really looking forward to you being able to work with us and make sure that we don't lose that focus moving forward. And I just want to also, related to this, just let everybody know who's on the call that through efforts from Stephen and Barry Dugan with the agency, there have been and will continue to be weekly coordination calls related to the coronavirus that's happening with key designated folks from not only the agency, but all the water contractors. And they've been really helpful for sharing information. Again, as I mentioned, it's done on a weekly basis. The topics that come up on a regular each week is how to maintain and implement consistent communication and messaging so that we make sure that there isn't misinformation from one agency reported out there versus another. We have ongoing discussions on just the status of personal protection equipment and how the contractors and the agency are doing individually, and how one group might, or one agency or contractor might be able to help out another. We have a discussion about whether there's any lapses in critical supplies such as chemical deliveries. Happy to report that hasn't been an issue to date, and hope that continues. And then another ongoing placeholder is just a general discussion on safety practices, procedures, and standards. So it's really been informative, and I can speak from just one of the water contractors. Stephen has stepped up and carried the ball on a couple items that are unresolved, and has come back at future meetings to have them answered and sometimes resolved too. So I really appreciate that effort, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other questions or comments from the group? No, seeing no hands. Is anyone going to jump in? This is always.
Susan, if I may add one more thing.
Yes.
What I didn't talk about, what I think is appropriate, is the county. This pandemic obviously is going to be around for a period of time, and the county is this operational area concept, is looking to put out exercises and develop kind of contingency plans specific to if we have additional disasters while we are still in this pandemic. What does that look like for us, and how do we work through that? And I see this group, the Emergency Training and Coordination Program, this subcommittee, being a structured forum for us being able to take what the op area is doing and applying that to make sure that the water sector, the wastewater sector is included. So the Department of Emergency Management at the county level, I think, will be very much involved in what we're doing, just so we don't continue to create contradiction or unnecessary redundancy, but that we're making sure that the water sector is fully integrated into the operational area and the countywide response system.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? I don't know who can answer this, whether it's Jennifer or Grant or someone. I noticed that in some areas they're checking the wastewater for virus. Are we doing any of that? I haven't heard anything in Sonoma County.
Jennifer, feel free to chime in. We had some really early, am I on?
Yes.
Yeah. There were a lot of work around the country actually going on. We first picked this up when Ben Hornstein hosted some folks from New York that were managing wastewater treatment plants, that we were learning from the early response and trying to gather all the information we could. There are a number of studies underway. The one I'm most familiar with is down at Stanford, where they do have a couple of Bay Area entities that are participating. We were willing and able, but quite frankly, the regional system here would have been a better candidate given the size and the scale. Sonoma Valley probably would have been what we picked on. And by the time we indicated support, they'd had enough of a sample underway. But I would think that in the Bay Area, with luck, they're freezing samples supposedly prior to the wave, during our peak, and post, and they're going to be giving you early detection. That's the theory, at least. So we'll follow that pretty closely. I know Santa Rosa was willing. I'll let Jennifer talk to that. I think they just kind of had their own setup, but we're very supportive of it. I think it's intriguing. Jennifer?
Yeah, thanks, Grant. We also actually heard from water reuse pretty early on and some other WRF studies that were going on. So we did offer, similar to the water agency, particular, we were trying to work with Stanford, but I think everyone offered very, very quickly. So we offered pretty early on, but they had already had their fill of agencies participating in samples. So for the sub-regional system, we're still willing. If any other studies or things come up, we're happy to participate and help in any way we can. But at this point, we are not involved in any studies at this time.
Thank you guys for that. Okay, we can now move on to items for the next agenda for our meeting on August 3rd. Whether that will be another Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting, I don't think we all know yet, but we'll make it happen however it is. So any thoughts on items?
I think I better comment on one since I've been following the email traffic coming through here.
Okay.
David Keller, I know we normally have Brenda Aileman. I think by the next time we have this, they're going to be asking us to come up with a mechanism for real-time comments and have been asking us of that. I don't think we could do much about it today, but probably for the next WAC meeting, we probably can find a way that we can get commentary that way. They're asking for it, and we should probably do our best to find a way to do that.
I think we're all getting better and better with Zoom as we get there. So yes, I think as we work through it, I think we can get there.
And Madam Chair, this is Jennifer. We will be able to do that for the next one. So this was our sort of transition meeting from being on the phone to being virtual. And our next one, we will have the ability to have live raising hands by the public. So we're testing that out with our other public meetings as well.
And maybe someday, again, we'll all be able to be in the same room together. Okay, so
let's hope. Madam Chair, this is Drew.
Yes, Drew.
I just want to again thank City of Santa Rosa and all the staff for even putting these meetings on and coordinating them. I mean, it's an incredible amount of work that goes on, and especially thanks to Jennifer and Gina and Easter and you know, this one went pretty well, and as Jennifer said, we've already been talking about following with the City of Santa Rosa's lead for the next one being even further improved for public comment. So I'm looking forward to that, and thanks again to the Santa Rosa staff.
Hear, hear.
Yes, I would add my thanks, and thanks
Amen.
and Easter for the test run, because that was helpful too, to make sure that everything was working properly. Really appreciate all the people in the background trying to make things happen for everyone. It's much appreciated. Any other comments for the good of the order? Okay, well, you all be safe, and hopefully we'll see one another again soon. If not, we will virtually get together on August 3rd. And we are adjourned at 10:54. So enjoy.
Thank you, Susan. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Appreciate your service.